Welcome, zombie fans, to this week's episode of Reanimated, coming to you from Brooklyn and the West Coast, along with my co-host, Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Hey, what's up?
Oh, I should mention, I'm AJ Conrad. And it is Memorial Day weekend, so, lots of good things going on, lots of propaganda in Prospect Park with military vehicles and such. So that was weird, but they were all set up yesterday. You
had an Osprey and a Blackhawk, it looked like.
Yep, there was Navy and Marine vehicles there, plus they somehow bust in a bunch of musicians, so there was like a band thing going on.
Like a brass band?
Yep. Memorial Day weekend, and it was kind of weird to watch them take off, so that was kind of, because people kept wanting to get pretty close to them, and like just kind of flooding the fields. But they were very popular.
How did they keep people from walking underneath the helicopter and the other, vehicles as they're like landing and stuff? Were there just rings of people out there saying, "Don't come over here"? Because
there were rings of police. So like they took a really long time. I mean, from what we understood, they were supposed to take off a long time before they actually did, but it was such a popular thing. Like, I don't know if it was in the photo I sent to you, but everybody had totally mobbed them, and they had like, everybody was just kind of waiting. And I guess the band was late or something weird, or the band just showed up, so they decided to hang out for a while longer. And when they started to sort of get ready, there was like a bunch of policemen and women that were basically clearing out the area. Though I will say, even so, people were still trying to get closer to get their photos, which is like, no, guys, get back. So I don't know about them landing. I mean, that to me seemed a little, because I don't know that people knew that they were coming, but people definitely knew they were taking off, and it took a long time for them to basically do they were running. I forget which one started first. The Osprey started last, but they were hanging out for a good 10 or 15 minutes before they actually took off.
No.
So
the pictures you sent me were from pretty far away, so I take it you didn't get closer for a...
I mean, you could walk up. The crowds were a little bit unruly, and I don't particularly like walking through massive crowds, especially, just generally I'm not into it. But Bill and our other friends kind of went up and were talking to everybody. And I guess that the idea they were gonna, I don't know, they were saying that they were gonna leave them alone, but then people started flipping switches and stuff, and it's like, why are you letting them in? I don't know. It just seemed to be a little too much access, in my opinion. Just things that if I were flying those things, I don't know that I would really want people crawling in and out of the cockpit and whatever, but they were. So anyway, that was yesterday. I don't know. Weirdly enough, there was a whole article sort of in the little local paper or whatever that it was supposed to be today. So I don't know if they're coming back or something, or if that was just kind of a miscommunication. So kind of weird though, because you can definitely hear them flying around the neighborhood. They're quite loud. And then they did a little kind of tour around the park after they took off, which was also kind of strange to see them that close, flying overhead.
Oh, that's just a fan service kind of deal.
No, I know, and everybody was like, yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that was that. How about your day?
Oh, it's been a pretty chill. We had a quinceañera yesterday. I did not attend, but, half my family did. Just usual stuff, I guess. Our town's fair, it happens every Memorial Day weekend, so there's a lot of, there was a parade on Thursday, and then this fair goes for the whole weekend. And that's pretty interesting if you like animals, and not it's like our town's agricultural roots really come out at this fair, with Future Farmers of America and 4-H coming out and doing, they're dressed in their fancy white outfits, and they're judging people's swine and sheep.
So 4-H propaganda?
I mean, yeah, it's
I'm teasing.
Yeah, the whole parade is
No, I
propaganda.
know.
Basically, everybody who's in the parade is like looking at my 5-year-old kid and being like, "You should come do wrestling at the high school." I'm like, "Nope." Next, I mean, wrestling will be fine. Maybe one day we'll see. Just
It's all in good fun though. Those 4-H kids grow some good stuff. They make some good stuff.
Yeah, those animals sell for a lot. So for
Yeah.
some kids, it's like how they fund their first year, the junior college or whatever, is by selling rabbits for $800 a pop
Yeah.
for 4 years in a row.
They are industrious, those 4-H kids.
Of course, for me, Memorial Day weekend is a little bittersweet too because, yeah, maybe the further away I get from my military service, the more I kind of look back and reflect on it. And this weekend is about remembering the people who died in service, and so that's kind of what I end up doing.
Yep. I can understand that. It's sobering.
Yeah, I mean, especially when, I'm doing things like going to a barbecue, and
Right.
for most of America, that's what it's about, and just sometimes you have to kind of snap out of it, and that's why your Marines and Navy guys were in the park, because they're like, this is a weekend where people think about the military.
Well, okay, so I have no, I think that is good, but I also think it would be nicer if it was surrounding some memorial-like event, if that makes sense, as opposed to just a demo.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that doesn't sit well with me, is that this was, they're all into the park and whatever, but there isn't anything. It's just kind of like having everybody, and I guess there is some value in having people come around and like talk to our servicemen and be there, and they're human, but it just feels a lot more like a demonstration versus what it should be.
You want it to be more meaningful.
Yeah, definitely.
I get it.
Because it's like
sometimes it can feel really crass when recruiting stuff is going on.
It's not just that, but it's very much like even the people like in there, and it's like they get, oh, that's so cool and whatever, and it's like, well, yeah, but like, why don't you talk to some of these people and talk to them about what they're doing? Just my thing. But in any case, that is that, and I think we have some news to talk about today.
It's just an odd smattering of news.
Mm-hmm. And then we have a very short review, I suspect.
I mean, maybe,
because we are reviewing Daylight's End, which was a 2016 film.
Sure was.
And I don't know. Let's jump into it a little bit. With some also kind of weird news, but this was a strange article, and we sometimes see these, and there's like a couple of them in here when Walking Dead is coming back, or when they're like promoting something. These little like sort of, I guess I should call them what they are, because they're totally clickbaity, but articles about different things that are zombie related. This one in particular is about real resurrection experiments, which is a little dark. And so it kind of goes back, and you and I have talked about quite a few of these, which I don't know how that makes me feel, but we have.
Well, the woman from New Hampshire who was dead for 5 hours, we've definitely talked about that.
We have absolutely talked about that. And we talked about the resurrection pigs, and, the whole electrical experiment thing that happened way back when. So they're there, and we'll throw this article in there for you to take a look at. But again, be warned, it is certainly clickbaity. And, the sort of summary is what we had talked about when the Yale experiment came to light, which is what are the guidelines in terms of doing these things, and what is the definition of death. And, it's kind of disturbing, more so because of how many of these there have been. And it's not shocking, because humans have always been fascinated with death and with resurrection. But it's, they're pretty gruesome, some of these experiments. I don't even know what to think about any of that. So, I don't know.
It's definitely some fringe science area stuff. But yeah, it's fun to talk about and think about the fact that resurrection and reanimation is a thing.
True. But maybe we'll hear more later. Also, I don't know if you caught this news article. I did not put it in here, but there was in Boston. There were these at the Boston Aquarium. There were these anacondas that were all female, and one basically had babies. So she cloned herself.
But is this one of these things where reptiles and fish can sometimes switch genders for a hot second so they can...
No, because she didn't switch genders. She basically cloned her own DNA. So they are all perfect clones of her DNA.
Life will find a way, baby.
That is exactly what it said. My favorite part, and I think it may have been in a Washington Post article, was that she doesn't need no manaconda. But of all the things to be able to self-propagate, that is not one of the ones I would like to hear about.
You don't want it to be anacondas?
Yeah, do not want more anacondas.
Something ancient that, has been around for gazillions of years.
I am fearful of snakes and sharks, and part of the reason that I am is because they have not evolved, and the reason why they have not really evolved is because they're pretty much perfect, as is.
Because in height.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay. But they haven't evolved because they're perfect animals. I concur.
Yep.
And why not then? Should they decide that they're so perfect that they shall clone themselves?
Right, and it's really like there's photos of the little baby anacondas, and I'm like, ooh, sorry, it just does. I'm not into it. Not into it at all. But next up, have you read this article? The only reason I put this in there was because there was a film I honestly don't recall us talking about, the weird zombie Hawaiian shark film. Did we ever talk about this?
We haven't done either of the zombie with an I, no E movies. And maybe that's something that is like remiss. Those are the Italian ones, right?
Right. So,
we have never gone there, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because the feature art, the makeup is always so disturbing in those.
They are really disturbing. I mean, nobody does horror like Italians generally.
We should, should be on our list. However, this list of best horror zombie movies ranked is complete hot garbage.
Agreed. I just put it on there specifically because we had not talked about the Italian films, and I was like, oh, maybe we should.
Yes, we should. But let's talk about this list real quick. Number 10, 1 being best, 10 being top 10, but not best, is Night of the Living Dead.
Right. It's kind of like, why would that be that low on the list? It's kind of weird,
It does seem a little strange. And maybe we should actually work together to come up with our consensus top 10 list sometime. That would be, I think, kind of interesting.
Maybe we should do that. I think I agree.
Number 9 is Zombie 2 with just zombie with an I, no E. And it's a zombie underwater facing down a shark, which, okay. Oh, the Italians, I love it.
I know.
The Walking Dead is the TV show.
Yeah, so it's not a movie, so that's also a problem.
Wait. It says horror movie zombies. Oh, so they're ranking the zombies, not the actual shows.
But still.
That's a distinction, though.
It
is. But why is The Walking Dead on this list? Doesn't make much sense. And honestly, I saw this the first time, and I thought this was Day of the Dead because I thought it was the elevator scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's just that's the tank scene in the pilot of The Walking Dead. Return of the Living Dead, which we have reviewed, and I don't think either of us were really that into the movie, but we did say how terrifying these zombies were because they were so difficult to kill. Mm-hmm. And then Dead Snow at 6 with your typical Nazi zombie fare. Planet Terror, which was half of the half of that double feature that Rodriguez and Tarantino put out.
Yep.
Which I never saw, which, again, maybe that's something that we should fix.
Oh, did we not review Planet Terror?
No, we have not.
Weird. Okay, well, we should do that one.
Okay, that's why I love these lists. Sometimes it just tells you where your priorities need to be. Maybe they shouldn't be on Daylight's End, and they should be on things like
Planet Terror
and Zombie 2. Train to Busan makes it to number 4, which I am wholeheartedly in favor of.
I'm cool with that.
Dawn of the Dead, this Zack Snyder 2004 is at number 3, and I'm also cool with that. World War Z is at number 2, and I am
not cool with that. Nobody's cool with that.
Anybody's on board with that. That could be in the top 10. Potentially, but it would be down at the 10 or 12 area. And then 28 Days Later makes it to number 1. And of course, that's, I think, the only film that HA and I have talked about for almost 3 hours on this podcast. So
and we could have done it for so much longer too.
That's probably where we would land too. But yeah, I think we do need to do a consensus top 10 list of,
All right,
of
let's
movies
do it.
or of zombies.
Sure.
Potentially. Anyway, so it's an interesting list, but we don't agree with all of it. That's for sure. You
What else
put in
is
an
up?
article about Days Gone in here, which we have talked about, but I'm also mad at it.
Well,
because-
I didn't like. I was sort of this. Okay, talk about why you were mad at it.
I'm mad at it for technical reasons, in that it is a PlayStation 4 exclusive, and I'll probably never get to play it unless I decide, I'm gonna spend $800. I don't think they cost that much anymore. I think I'd have to spend $400 on a PlayStation 4 in order to play this game, and that pisses me off. I'm like, why? I don't agree with. I think I've talked about this before. I don't like platform exclusives. I think that all games should come out especially on console, they should come out for all consoles. There's not a whole lot of, that I know of, a whole lot of programming that needs to happen to release it that way. It's like going to your town fair where nobody has a Square account and it's cash only. You're just limiting your sales, is my take on it.
Well, that's what I figured you would say. But
Okay.
I threw it in there anyway because we were a little bit light on news.
Fair enough. If you want to hear me talk about, sale strategy, talk about Days Gone.
Next up was this kind of there was apparently this play that came out that was called The Church of St. Bearer, and it got some good reviews. I hadn't heard that much about it, but apparently it was playing in this Fringe Fest in Florida, so there were a bunch of reviews about it. I think we should keep an eye on it because we may see it make the rounds at some point. I don't know that it would ever get to your neck of the wood, but maybe it'll get to New York. You don't know. But it had some pretty solid reviews in general. So
this isn't a play. This is a film?
It's a play, I think.
Okay.
So if they do some productions, maybe it's going to come elsewhere. But I just thought the interesting thing was just the sort of logistics of staging a zombie play successfully is hard. So, though I will tell you, I am waiting because, it kind of feels like Anna and the Apocalypse is going to be a musical at some point, and Broadway or off Broadway. Mm-hmm. And I think that is definitely doable, just in the way that it's set up. I think you could manage that pretty nicely, and they've already got the soundtrack basically. So, I wonder if we will see that in the near future. So
that could be pretty cool.
Could be. And last up is not necessarily something that you and I need to chat about. You can edit this out, but the Hot Zone. Have you seen anything about it?
Just a little bit, yeah. And
Basically,
I agree that we love talking about Contagion, you and I. It doesn't really fall in our wheelhouse in terms of what this podcast is about, but it's so adjacent. It might as well be in a way.
Right. So anyway, it's a mini series. It all airs starting, I think, today, over the next 3 days. And so just throwing that out there.
Oh, and dude, have you been watching Chernobyl at all?
I have not. We were holding off because we have a friend that really wanted to watch it with Bill. But it's supposed to be really good.
It's great.
It's hard to watch, though, I heard.
It's nasty. Nate. Oh my gosh. It's pretty gross. So Bill would have to steel himself before, I feel like.
All right, I will let him know he needs to steel himself. He's prepared, though.
Okay.
He knew going in that it'd be a dark one, but
one of the things I'm loving, one of the great things about it is the cast, and I don't remember all their names, but at least two of the guys from The Terror on AMC are in it, and kind of like the hero and the main hero and the main villain from The Terror are both in this, and it makes me happy. And Terror Season 2 has been announced. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's basically a horror anthology that's going to be continuing on AMC. And if you remember, the first one was about two old boats trying to find the Northwest Passage and getting and just the horrible things that happened to those crews. Based on a true story, but then it gets very much not based on a true story halfway through. And so that's going to be continuing as a horror anthology, I think, with Season 2 coming out later this year, and I'm very, very, very excited.
Cool. All right. Well, let's figure out whether we should look at some of this stuff. Put some notes in.
Yeah.
All right. So I say we jump into our recap of Daylight's End, and I like. All right. I think that I cannot recommend this to anybody.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, but let's start out with a couple of things. So this is a 2016 film. And it was, when it was released, it was also released on VR, correct? At the same
Apparently, it
time?
was the first movie to ever be released in the theater and for virtual reality at the same time. I don't know what this would have
Yeah.
been like to watch it on a headset. I think that just means they have to like release it in a binocular fashion. I don't really know how that works.
Yeah, I mean, it. So here's the thing. Have you ever seen Daybreakers? Did we review that one here?
I feel like I've I feel like I've seen it.
So that was like an Ethan Hawke vampire film that was actually pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and I feel like this was kind of in that vein where it starts out a little bit like there's this lone guy out there kind of figuring stuff out and sort of setting up the thing.
Wasn't Daybreakers from the perspective of a vampire though?
Yeah, so a little different, but the idea or the sort of way that it unfolds has some, to me, it has some similar things that happen in this particular film. And also, we should say that these aren't really zombies per se, they're a little bit more vampiric, I would say.
Yeah.
They're allergic to sunlight, so they kind of sleep during the day. People drag them out and they die in the sunlight. But our main, we got an interesting cast. Mainly
Right.
the biggest sort of name I would say is Lance Hendrickson. And then the sort of main guy, the sort of like rebel that's killing all these things is Thomas Rourke, played by Johnny Strong.
Which doesn't sound like a real name.
I would imagine it's not. But we've also got Louis
March.
Mandylor in there. And
Yeah, recognizable, but I don't know where
he's
I
been
know him
in
from.
like a ton of stuff, and he's one of those guys that's just
One
like
of those guys.
in a lot. But it's little Mad Max esque, little
Yeah.
Walking Dead esque. I think that the quality of the film, like they did a lot of obvious filming in the daytime, but made it
And then
night.
put that weird filter over it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it felt like I was watching Omega Man.
Yeah. So that was annoying, but it had about, let's see, like a $2 million budget, which is not a ton, and they did have an enormous number of extras.
They had a
I think-
huge cast, and the sets were pretty extensive for
and-
$2 million. It was like shot downtown somewhere.
Yeah.
I think it might have been North or South Carolina based on the credits. I'm
Yeah.
not sure, but they had like lots of urban blight places that they were shooting at least, and like that first set piece with that intersection where there's the big shootout. That's a big set right there, and then they go downtown to the prison, and that's a huge set.
Yeah. I feel like you notice the sort of, I don't want to say low budget, like quality, but you do, especially with some of the explosive stuff, because some of those flares like are CGI'd in a terrible
Sure.
way.
Yeah. I found that the budget was noticeable there, yes, and in the way that they were doing the lighting, yes.
Yeah.
But for me, what made this movie most noticeably subpar was,
The script.
I think, the acting.
The script and the acting. I mean,
'cause
the
I think
script's pretty
The
rough.
script was okay because honestly, like I'm thinking when they're doing their raid on the hotel, I'm like, there are a lot of guys on this. There are a lot of dudes in this little team of people going to the hotel who I should care more about, who they've
And I
given
don't.
appropriate amounts of screen time to and appropriate amounts of lines to. But I don't care about any of these guys in this team.
No.
And I think that, I mean, like one of the things I might complain about in a film is like, oh, they didn't give this character enough time and lines for me for him to develop as a character and for me to really want to be invested in his story. But I feel like all of those guys did have, maybe except for Vlad,
Yeah.
who they only started to develop as they were
Vlad
walking
suddenly
into
appears
the
out
hotel.
of nowhere, and then it's like, oh, Vlad, and they suddenly give him this backstory.
They gave it to him right before they went into the hotel.
To kill
but,
him, yes.
But like the guy with the swoopy hair and
Mm-hmm.
who they said was a criminal, he was just like arrested for a DUI.
I know.
But he was like hitting on Sam. They did do things to make you care about these guys. But then I think it was just like not coming across. And maybe that was script.
I think
but
that's
I felt
got to
like
be
it was
script
something to
and
do with
acting.
performance. I thought it was performance.
Maybe a bit of both, but like on a low budget film like this, you don't have that much time. My guess is they didn't have a ton of time to rehearse either. And you need some of that stuff to gel a cast together and to have them actually interacting well together, and maybe that's part of it. But I did feel the script was pretty low quality. I especially felt like Rourke was just kind of like, I didn't care about him from the beginning or the end of the film.
No, he was never sympathetic.
And also, in terms of plot and plot devices and things that you're trying to do, some of the things that they did made absolutely no sense in the scenario that they were in.
Well, the whole hotel run.
Oh God, it's like, what are you doing? This seems like a really stupid idea.
If you like take that whole mission out, they found the bus and they were going to be able to get everybody out. And
Right.
But the hotel run drew all the vampires back to the police
Right.
station too early. So if they hadn't done that, it wouldn't have been a problem, and they all would have gotten away, including all of these like all these badasses, all these hero characters who got killed at the hotel and in the prison subsequently.
Right. But also, like, the whole hotel run and the idea behind it, even going into it, if you're going to do that, great. But, like, there's ways to do that without, like, do you really need to go down into, where they are? Like, do you really need to go all the way downstairs, right? And also, the one thing that I thought was definitely missing from this film in terms of problem solving is, like, that they are light sensitive. Nobody's figuring out how to use, like, sun lamps or UV anything to kill them. I mean, every film that has these in this kind of day and age has that kind of thing as a method of destroying these kinds of creatures. And you're going to use everything in your arsenal in order to do that.
Well, their arsenal seemed to consist purely of having hundreds of thousands of rounds of ammunition and not very much else.
Right.
And this movie did feel kind of like an episode of The Strain in a lot of ways, except that the baddies weren't quite as batty as in The Strain. And yeah, they mostly the baddies were mostly just extras or stuntmen who would wear hoods and would run towards people. They weren't that difficult to defeat because didn't even have to get headshots. You could just shoot these guys anywhere or stab them multiple times, as Vlad was fond of doing with his combat shovel and his dagger.
But that's the other thing, the mythology of these creatures and the plague. There's like one line where it's like, oh, it doesn't matter where this started. And then we've got something, like we have Rourke, the main sort of like Mad Max-esque character, talking about alphas and sort of giving us a little glimpse into that, but not really expanding upon that.
Alpha behavior, though, was something that nobody else had seen before until this one guy showed up. So this is kind of like patient zero sort of behavior, right? If you want to think about that film.
Yeah,
it's better than that film.
It is, but damn, this is like it's just really grasping at straws. Throughout the entire film. And even at the end of it, I was just glad that they were just driving away and I didn't have to watch them anymore. I didn't care that Rourke was going off on his own. I didn't, no. The whole thing just felt very shallow and superficial.
Rourke had to go off on his own because he had gotten so many of their community killed that there was no other way for that to go.
I know. And honestly, had he not shown up, they would have been just fine.
Well, no, because Sam would have been killed by those marauders if he had not
and she wouldn't have
her.
told them about the plane, I guess. So, all right, I'll give you that. But overall, I mean, look, it's not the worst I've ever seen, but it does feel like with a little bit of polishing of this script and a little bit of more rehearsing, maybe this could have been better. And again, like, I don't mind it if the plot is going somewhere ridiculous sometimes. That doesn't bother me at all. We're talking about horror films. But when you've got people that are supposedly military trained or whatever, going in and doing stupid stuff, like, their one advantage is the sunlight. And to me, it's like there were so many parts when they were running through that hotel where they could have blown out windows to give themselves some space, right? Like,
Yeah.
like things that would have helped them along. Also, I will mention during their last siege, like the whole thing where he's going after the Alpha and then suddenly it's daylight again. Man, that night went by really quickly.
That was like a 5-minute night. Yeah.
Like, it just, the timing of the night and the day thing was quite inconsistent and strange. So I just felt like you can have some of these points in the plot, but you need to be consistent with them and you need to use them in a smart way. And I just don't think that any of these people would have survived this whole thing.
It was a
based upon what we saw of their tactical sense. That's all.
Yeah. I'm torn on this because I wanted to like it more because of the cast, and then I'm also saying, but the acting was subpar. But when you look at, like, they had found all these like kind of iconic looking people. Mm-hmm. They had made their cast look interesting, and was that Dante from Clerks? Was the first guy with the goatee who got?
It looked
bit?
like him, didn't it? I thought maybe it was. I guess we should probably find that out.
I would like to find out that if we can do some on the air podcast.
All right.
Research. But like as far as the other people in this cast, it was like an interesting looking group of people, and I think they did a good job of that. Like with the Marauders, all looked like they had been fired from Blackwater for being too badass. Like they looked just like a bunch of mercenaries, and they did a good job of that. And the hero cops looked appropriately heroic. And I think this film also borrowed a lot from Black Hawk Down. In the worst ways, in its overuse of the M14 rifle, which is Rourke's rifle, and his never-ending magazines for that, and for his sidearm. You know what's great about this film, though, HA, is very, very little use of full automatic rifles. They are always on single semi-automatic fire. And I really appreciate that. There are a couple scenes where people like spit out a bunch of rounds, but they make up for being on semi-automatic by firing literally, like I said, hundreds of thousands of rounds throughout the film. And they do show people changing magazines, but there's still just a crazy amount of shooting going on. It's another interesting thing. Oh yeah, and in terms of the cast and how interesting looking they are. So they have these like hero cops. They also have these like salt of the earth Texans who are mostly identifiable by their cowboy hats, their shotguns, and their salt. They're like, yeah, salt of the earth girlfriends with great abs. I like the fact that they had different kinds of people portrayed, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know if that resonated with you at all. Starring Brian O'Halloran. Yeah.
That's not him, but he looks remarkably like him.
He does. All right, so it wasn't Dante from Clerks. Would have been cooler if it was.
Would have been, definitely. But anyway.
I'm torn. Like I liked parts of this film. I agree that overall it doesn't land, but I liked the casting. I liked the storyline was not great. So there were problems with the script.
There were moments when I was laughing out loud, and I agree with you. There's parts where I was like, I really should like this movie more, but I'm not. I think if you're looking for just a really silly zombie film to watch, this is definitely that. Some of the lines land and they're just ridiculous. Some of the effects are just ridiculous and cheesy.
It would have definitely benefited from a better version of the Rourke character, someone with more than one dimension. Because he's humorless and he's just made of like arm muscles and never-ending magazines and a mission that he's gonna succeed in no matter what.
Yeah, but even the other thing that kind of bothered me was that they have this character of Sam, and I think that they were trying to make her like this leader in the group, but really they don't do a ton with her character at all. She's just kind of and she's played by Chelsea Edmondson. And they don't really do a ton with her other than have her sort of build or try to build some background with Rourke's character. And then they always are talking to, other characters are talking to her about her level of hope, but we don't really get to learn all that much about her. Yeah. So that kind of bothers me too. And then it's like, oh, you're going to go off and lead these people. Well, that would have been great if we had shown a little bit. I mean, she was out on her own, obviously. She's definitely, she is single engine certified in terms of flying. We know this. And so they did try to they tried to do a few things with her that should have made us care more about her, but ultimately it just fell flat. So, I think that would have made the film better as well, as to just give her a little bit more instead of just having her sort of be the person to get information out of Rourke about his past, which we already knew a bit from flashbacks and didn't really elicit all that much. So
yeah, I mean, I guess we're on the same page. We wish it had landed better, and we wish that the cast had either been better or had a better script. But either way, this would be fun to watch with friends if you are into like laughing at a zombie movie. So that could be something you could do.
All right, I think that's that.
I think that's all we have left to say about it. Yeah, sadly.
Thanks everybody for listening. Join us next time when we talk about Planet Terror. Stuart's never seen it, so I'm very curious to hear what his impressions are. If you'd like to drop us a line about Daylight's End or about Planet Terror, send us an email, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. Reanimatedpcast is our Twitter handle, and reanimatedpodcast.com is our web address. So feel free to drop us a line. And until next time, ciao.
Thanks for listening, and bye.